turns to art is another excellent medium through which relaxation can be achieved. So we welcome to our show now a legendary artist, Mr. Yasser Musa. Welcome to our show, Mr. Musa.
Thank you very much. It's good to be with you. I watch your show a lot and I admire, because I know in the background there are a lot of young people involved. I admire what you all are doing. You all belong to the new generation, the COVID now generation of technology. Big respect to you all.
And thank goodness, yesterday allow even the old farts like me to be a part of it. So I am absolutely delighted to be here. Besides, of course, being a legendary artist, the Moose, as I call him, is also the muse of many Belizean artists and a legendary educator who has always, throughout his career, been searching for exciting, stimulating, provocative ways to teach. So talk to us a little bit about what it's like to be a teacher and specifically an art teacher during these challenging COVID times.
Well, I think that all teachers right now are faced with an incredible challenge, an opportunity really to transform how they teach and also to think about how to make new connections with their students. I think teaching, like what you're doing here, is a dialogue, really a negotiation among people. Yes, we box up teaching into ideas of, oh, in the classroom and there's this 1 to 30 ratio, but we need to look at teaching as the big explosive responsibility that we have. And so I find that this moment has revealed itself to me to be a perfect opportunity to develop, to design, to think about, to explore, to experiment, all those things going on at the same time. Yes, it might seem chaotic and stressful and difficult to manage, but I think if you have the confidence that you're doing something right, which is to make an empathetic connection with your students, who will then make an empathetic connection with the society and the community. I think if you keep those things in mind, you will be able to develop a lot of creativity with how you teach.
It's exciting. And one of the most exciting things that I found is that you always find these ways to foment education among your students. You're one of the proponents of the mantra that I've held now for over 40 years, which is to never let your schooling get in the way of your education.
Yes,
So that's the thing. But we're here today to talk to you not just as an educator, but as the inspiration, as the provocateur of a very exciting magazine. Claire, talk us through how this came about and what it is.
Well, I am as joyed and as deeply and profoundly affected by what has happened with Claire, because since I posted it as a digital magazine on Monday, we have gotten hundreds of downloads. And I wanted to start off by calling the names of the young people involved, if you would give me a second to do that.
Absolutely. Go for it.
Ashanti Agar, Elias Alamina, Karen Ross, Chelsea Myers, Haley Castro, Kristen Zaiden, Kaylin Ramklam, Jay Wagner, Melissa Ely, Ian Ayuso, and Justin Broadhurst, and Patrick Castillo. Those are the names of the young Belizeans who are part of my digital publishing class at St. John's Junior College. We meet every Saturday, and we've been meeting since January, obviously, but then of course, when the pandemic struck and our school was called off and we went into our little silos home, stay home, we had to continue. But the day before the last class, I should say, that we had, we were discussing this idea of bringing together all their creative efforts, because they've been art students for 2 years and they are about to graduate. And so we came up with this concept of an e-magazine. We had an idea to print it, and we still want to print after the pandemic subsides, so to speak. We want to print examples of the magazine. But so we came together, and it was decided that it would be student driven. I would only act as a kind of provocateur, giving conceptual guidance. What I like to call me being a lead learner. I think that is a primary characteristic of a teacher these days, that you are curating an atmosphere, you're curating an environment where you would then you would foster your students to feel free to do what they want in that space of collaboration. So that was the setting, because all the students, all 12 of them, have amazing design skills, technical skills. But what I was trying to get at was, how do we go beyond that and get towards collaborative skills, what they call in education nowadays soft skills, how to develop their confidence, how to develop their sense of time management, taking ownership of the project. To me, those were the important components. Anyway, the class unanimously decided that they wanted Jay Wagner as their artistic director. So after that moment, I would not have interfered at all with the aesthetics of the magazine, because we've been talking about that from January and on and on and on, about all of these things, style and aesthetics and concepts. But I said to them, you're on your own. I will only monitor the WhatsApp to see how things are and manage, let's do this first draft and second draft, so on and so forth. But I have to say that what was done, not just as a product, we can talk about that in a minute, but what was done as the process, which I think is critical, with them coming together and saying, look, we want to do this, we want to do that. No, this is stupid, this bad, this blah, 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 blah. All that kind of interaction, to me, was a beautiful thing to watch, because I had to watch it through their WhatsApp. And man, I realized how old I am when I had to look at all the memes that they communicate with, because I couldn't understand half of it, but I was so appreciative to be a part of it. I felt like a complete invited guest into a new process. I really felt that way, because they were developing on their own and being, to me, what I admire about this group and I admire about this generation is how considerate they are of each other, how sensitive they are of each other's ideas, and how they mold and guide each other to become the best persons that they can. And I think the product, the magazine, really reflects that, the connections that they have for each other and the sensitivity that they have.
We are definitely going to put up the link, because we want Belizeans to download Claire Magazine, take the time to go through it. I love that you accept your role as agent provocateur. Talk to us about the product.
Okay, well, first of all, it's a graphic design class, right, in terms of its foundation. But the class is called digital publishing, meaning we develop products, let's call it that. I hate to use that term because it's so corporatist in its attitude. But we develop things that are put on digital platforms. So we developed all kinds of things over the past few months. But always we think of graphic design as a language, not a content, right? That's a very important idea. And it is a means, not an end. So if you look at the world today, you will know, because we're in the orbit of the American empire, let's call it that, that 90% of the graphics and visuals we consume are designed and prepackaged by a market-driven attitude, a corporate attitude. Obviously, they know the value of visualization, right? However, in our little small corner or little pocket of the swamp called SJC, I really have this connection to the Jesuit ideology here, which is that shouldn't graphic design be connected to social justice? Shouldn't graphic design be connected to community, to using the same tools that are being spent out there, billions of dollars by the Nikes and the DuPonts of the world, and even the Clorox that Mr. Trump is asking people to consume.
Aye.
Shouldn't those billions, shouldn't that industry idea also be tailor-made by smaller communities like our own artistic community and our education community to build up our community, to communicate with each other, to fashion ideas that are complicated in a way that only artists and graphic designers, and if to expand the word art into capital A, writers and poets and musicians, and have those platforms being used for a social purpose. So design with a social agenda.
Kind of like what we've seen driven by artists, Belizean artist Lito and Cuban artist Falco. Yes. And those were amazing exhibits. But to actually see your students take the kinds of concepts that we were introduced to by Lito and Falco and then do their own types of producing beyond that is absolutely amazing. I mean, you and I have spoken so many times about how we can move these things forward. And for me, I would like to see this now translate into money making for these young people. So what they are doing, I hope you will print a magazine that people will buy, but I hope you will also license the images so that they can be used to be put on coffee cups, on shower curtains, on any blasted thing you could imagine, cards, anything you can imagine that people can use. Because art is not just, like you said, art with the capital A, the big painting that costs $10,000. It's having a beautiful coffee cup with a gorgeous, relevant image and message on it.
Correct. And I think what you're getting at is the next step in terms of what comes after a person, a young female, a young male, leaves an educational institution, right? The ecosystem of learning and how we have all of these parameters for them. And then they enter the real world. And then we always hear, oh, well, they're not ready. And this kind of attitude to me is so toxic, because look at what the pandemic has taught us. That many of the things we thought we knew, we didn't know. And that if we don't take learning as now, that learning is life. That if we don't teach inside our own little bubbles of education, that when you step outside of this campus, you are still learning. When you step in your house or your street or your community, you are still learning, and that learning requires collaboration. And that's why what you said earlier is so important, because there are other people who are very digitally aware of how to incentivize, monetize, how to market these same types of products online, and that could probably open up new markets, so to speak, that we don't have to kind of limit ourselves to our aesthetic, artistic corner, but that we need to reach out to people who understand coding, who understand marketing, so that we don't do what has been done in the past 30 years, that everybody is in isolation. You're an expert in only this, and you stay in your corner. So I think this kind of experiment with doing an electronic magazine in a student setting really provokes the idea of what is possible when you step off the campus, so to speak.
Let me put you on the spot. If this was an exam that you had set, what would be the collective grade here?
Well, it was an exam. It was a final project, and they all got an A, because although Jay and Patrick Castillo was the curator, meaning that he helped to gather all the artworks and then kind of did a pre-selection. Although he and Jay probably did more work, I don't believe in this idea of, oh, because I'm the smartest academically, then I just have to be at the top. I believe that if it were not for Jay's leadership, both his aesthetic leadership, because he can out-design me any day from a technical standpoint. The guy is just an amazing designer. But aside from his leadership and his aesthetic skill, and aside from Patrick's ability to get along socially, that is his strength. Get along with everybody, and have the patience to say, okay, send it yet, you'll send it, please send it by tomorrow, blah blah blah.
That the act shepherd. He's
yes,
the one
correct.
leading the sheep.
Yes. Those two forces, along with the bigger force of a person like Melissa Ely, who is very meticulous in her drawing, or Haley Castro, who does the fashion design. Each of them have their own area of expertise, so to speak, that none of them could have duplicated. So then the fact that they were able to harness together, the collective grade is an A, right? Excellent. In the traditional way of thinking, you might say, well, J should get the A and then the rest should get something else. No. That is a very ancient retrograde view of education, which tries to siphon off people, tries to create an elite group that says you will run the society, the 10% that's at the top, and the rest of you will be just a sheep to take instructions. That is just a basic oppression system. So we have to, even as educators, think about how we oppress our students, how we are so authoritative and demanding in our expectations of them. Yet, are we demanding on ourselves like that? Do we meet the deadlines that we impose on them? To me, this is the kind of thinking that we should go through in a time where we have more downtime, so to speak.
Yeah. No, absolutely right. I really wish I can get you on to talk to my sister, because the lady actually made a laugh after me, man, because I post up a brilliant thing where I turn panadero make French toast.
Yes, I saw that.
I thought it was brilliant. I thought, look how simple. I take stale panadero and made a work of staggering genius out of it.
They thought you were going to make panadero from scratch, huh?
You know what I mean? Sad to say she was unimpressed, but there were people who appreciated it. So me not the pay she no mind. No, I think here's the here's the thing. If you can harness that type of creative impulse in anybody and keep it going throughout their lives, I think you've touched a divine spark off in your students that will never be extinguished.
That's very kind of you to say. And in a way, we all as teachers go into the classroom very vulnerable, because deep down, we all have our own quiet, private moments, and we all deep down know that we have a huge responsibility, that we are fashioning a moment in time that will be held by those young people for the rest of their lives. Because even when we reflect on our moments in school, we have these very strong feelings as to who inspired me. It's not necessarily which book I read specifically or which mathematical concept I grasped because the teacher was so brilliant in doing. But it's like what Maya Angelou always said so famously, that it's not people, you don't remember what people tell you and so, but you remember how people make you feel. And I think that is the curiosity spot of education.
Right. No, I mean, there's no question.
Constantly develop our own. Yes. So.
Okay.
It's teachers to me like Brenda Armstrong, like Father Robert Roskowski, that lit that fire in me, that have caused the curiosity in this cat to never go out. Talk to us finally, Yasser, about the time and the space during this COVID crisis for you to re-examine the role of education and to think beyond this now to where we go next.
Well, I think we have to approach it from a position of humility, right? Because for many years, probably 10 years ago, I really thought deep down that technology, devices, the internet, online learning would have been like a magic bullet, no? A vaccine, so to speak, if I can speak in those terms in this time. A vaccine that would immunize us from many of the woes of education. But as I have grown and I have read more things, I really feel that the interpersonal relationship between a teacher and a student is the most priceless part and the most sacred part of of education. However, if we don't approach education from a position of freedom, we will then do it from a position of gatekeeping. And if we don't look at how we can use technology as a tool to enhance what we're doing, I think that is where the new moment will happen, where teachers learn new technologies, new tools, new skills, but those are just to make their delivery, their impact, their negotiation with their students better. It's not like, okay, we're going to put that there and you just go there. If that were the case, then we could close school down tomorrow and everybody could migrate online. So we really need to consider the actual philosophy of education. I have a couple seconds left. And in that philosophy, there has to have this. Obviously, I come from a Jesuit education background, so I have a big bias. But previous to us coming into this COVID moment, the Jesuits had developed this 10-year plan, 2020 to 2030, with 4 big pillars, radical in my view, which is one, how do we walk with the youth? That is the main one of them. Obviously, they have a very strong also spiritual dimension. How do we connect to God in everyday things, not just a spirituality that like from here to up there, but a spirituality that's everywhere. And then how do we link with the earth, or the idea of the environment? And finally, and the part that I think is the biggest challenge for Belize going forward in the next 10 years, which is how do we make meaningful connection to the marginalized peoples in our society? So the youth, the marginalized, the earth, and God. Obviously, that each school has its own philosophy. But what I am saying to you right now is that I cannot go into my SJC classroom without understanding that philosophy and making my lesson, whether it is technologically infused or just me talking craziness like I like to talk, but it has to have that DNA of the philosophy. And it's the same thing like running a country, right? In a way, we are in an independence 2.0 moment. In 1991, we were in this frame, a historical frame of self-determination. And now in 2020, we are now being challenged again, as the poem said, to create a new society, a new just society.
And make independence a new beginning.
Yes, that's
time to get our head together for independence, as one of my favorite posters said.
That's a beauty.
Yeah. Thank you, Yasser. This has been an absolutely fascinating conversation. Please congratulate the Clare artists. I am advocating for us to have some of these young people on in our forums next week. And thank you for always making sure that education is relevant, it's timely, it's exciting, and it's fresh.
And holistic.
Thank you. And thank you, Andre. Thank you, Lisa. It has been a great pleasure to be with you all today. I really, as I said at the beginning, admire this beautiful interaction in terms of how you all design the technology as well as the type of content that you're producing. Big respect.
And it was a great pleasure listening to you, Mr. Yasser. You're calling us the COVID-19 generation, but I would like to invite you into that generation because you are keeping current and fresh and absolutely in tune with technology, of course. So excellent job, and I hope it inspires other people at home, especially when it comes to Clear the Magazine, to go look for it. We were displaying the link just now. Of course, it's as easy as a Google search also. I've been going through it just now, and it's just refreshing, and pop of colors and some very daring designs I saw. I saw the young lady who did the fashion and one who took a picture of herself and edited it. It was really enjoying to look at. So I hope people at home search for it and enjoy this beautiful art collection that's free for now.
Thank you.
Excellent. So, viewers, up next we have special envoy for women and children joining us, Miss Kim Simplice Barrow. So we will go for a very short commercial